Hey, it's Frankenmint, and I am going to try to do a longer form video that's not a YouTube short. Alright, so I think I'm giving up for the moment on kind of what to do. I have flashed Clipper firmware onto each of these enders, and I can detect them as a generic CH340 virtual COM port device on the MacBook. I do see that it carries from the MacBook to the VM, which is Debian, and that the Debian instance does see these different USB devices connected by path, but they have the same serial number. But that's fine, because I'm using the by path. But that's all it does. I can't seem to get them to connect to Clipper. I've messed with the configurations multiple times. I have early on, like before all this, when these were on Marlin, I do have Octoprint on here, and I was able to get, I think, this printer on the far left working with Octoprint. And what I realized now that I didn't know at the time was because I had bad data cables. That's why these others didn't work. So there's a strong likelihood that all three of these printers will work just fine using Octoprint on here. So long as this computer can handle supporting all three of these at the same time. So the original goal, right, was to have Clipper on all of the printers. So you see these three here. When I tend to do the YouTube shorts, I usually focus on these two here. And the only reason I've been doing that is just because it's just out of convenience. There really isn't a practical reason why I would choose these over those enders. I think it's just literally a matter of convenience at this point. I do have this SV07 here, which has not been opened yet, which I intended to expand out at some point, but you know, life happens. And of course I have these couple of Ender 3 V2 Neos, which pretty much was, you know, if you know how it works with guns, you know, airsoft replicas, you buy an average down. And so that's the point with this here. These were bought refurb to be able to average down the price. And this right here is just another basic Ender 3 Pro, which I'm turning into a treadmill printer at some point soon. But yeah, the original plan was to have pretty much everything in the workshop run on Clipper, so that I could be able to remotely administer STLs to the various print queues and print jobs. I also wanted to run a couple of cameras, so I can just kind of have live streams that are going of the prints sort of happen at all times. I thought that'd be kind of fun. But yeah, that's what sort of has happened. Like I've said, I can't seem to get this setup of three printers to work with this MacBook. I do have a Pi that, like, I had purposely allocated to be a computer server, so maybe, yeah, it may make sense to just point the Ender 5 to that Pi and to just log into the Pi and to see if I can get it to run kind of with a Clipper setup and instance. So, yeah. The reason why I'm all hesitant and why I'm like, I don't know, is because it's work. You know, it's work that I don't know if I really want to do. I will point out that I did think about potentially just replacing the boards and all these with like some 32-bit boards, and that should definitely solve my issue of them being unique or not. But like I've pointed out, I'm not certain if that really solves my problems or not. And so I think just running this directly to a Linux machine could work. And so ultimately, there's like a cost, right? A cost associated with this. Either I can spend the money on the boards, and I can probably source them for about $30 a pop using AliExpress. So with the discount, so I can actually get it maybe about $85, $90 landed cost to be able to get some 32-bit boards. Or I could spend $45 at the local Free Geek, which is a nonprofit out here, and I can just buy a Lenovo ThinkPad, like an old school, an old school Lenovo laptop instead of this MacBook, and then from there I will just again throw on Debian onto that and just be off to the races just the same. If it turns out this is an issue, but like I pointed out, the only way to know is I've really just got to try to run the Pi. Yeah. So I'm also thinking about so what's what I want to do, right? It's handle these three, right, in their own kind of set, handle these two and this third Solval into its own cluster, so I have its own Solval Clipper cluster. And this actually has Clipper built in on it, so which is really cool. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of have this be sort of a backup, if you will, not the main. And then I will still have like the Pi act as the main. And then finally, I intended to have these three enders on their own Clipper cluster. And so the idea is I was going to have 3 Clipper clusters for these 9 printers. And then I intended to pick up I talked to somebody who kind of convinced me out of it. But then at the last minute, I changed my mind and I decided that I would just go ahead and probably still end up picking up a Bamboo Labs printer. I know it's closed source, and I know in the spirit of things I should care about open source only. That's really the way to go. But my problem with open source only is that you run into like a tragedy of the commons issue, to where there's a bunch of prerequisite knowledge that's necessary to be able to get yourself off the ground and running. Like, I can't imagine trying to run and set up Clipper, from nothing, from like not having any experience with Python or any experience with programming. Like, it would seem daunting compared to now. It seems hard now, but it would seem like daunting otherwise. And so, I mean, pretty much like I said, I'm working through what I've got to work through. What's nice about the Bamboo Labs printers is it's truly like it's set and forget. Now I did find out about certain companies working on their own first party AMS systems, and so that would be an exciting development to kind of work through. However, I found a pretty good deal on like an X1C with a couple of AMSs for a great price, and so I would happily, give that X1 a new home. Maybe down the line I'll still pick up an AMS, but that's kind of where I'm at. I really want to jump onto the whole multicolor, multi-material bandwagon. Something about airsoft replica rubberized grips just kind of really gets my motor going. Like, wouldn't it be amazing if this texture and pattern was TPU? That's kind of where I'm at. Like, I would love to really do the whole multi-material thing. Excuse me. So that's where things are at. That's the plans and kind of where I am at with what I plan to be at. Yeah, the only reason I really wanted to even get this going on Clipper with these was because, like I said, it always keeps falling back to I have some hardware that I just kind of wanted to run on here. And why do 2 sets of why compile Marlin firmware and then do separate Clipper firmware to deal with it? And that's why I said, all right, I'll just kind of migrate. So that is the rabbit hole I've gone through and gone down. What'll even be fun too is I don't even technically have Raspberry Pis. I have the Lee potatoes, and so I'll be running this through a Libre potato computer, which, I mean, it should, I don't know. I've seen that there's potential compatibility issues even possibly with those, so I don't know. We'll find out. We will find out. Well, Thank you for tuning in and looking at my dirty garage and my 3D printers. I will work on cleaning that garage, probably never. Alright, y'all have a wonderful day. I love you, and you need to love your neighbor.